The Dark Knight Rises was released in 2012, the same year that the Avengers finally assembled on the big screen and John Cusack saved us all from extinction. The Dark Knight Rises is Christopher Nolan's third and final Batman movie, and it had super big shoes to fill. I mean, not only was it a follow-up to the best Batman movie of all time, it was a follow-up to one of the best movies of our generation, and that can be soul-crushing for a person. How do you follow that up? The simple answer is that you fucking don't, but this is Hollywood we're talking about. We have to do everything in at least a trilogy because fuck you. What I'm getting at here is that the cards were against The Dark Knight Rises from the get-go, and while it obviously doesn't live up to this...
I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you? Go back to ripping off mob dealers? No, you complete me.
It's still good on its own merit. Honestly, to me, The Dark Knight Rises' relationship with The Dark Knight reminds me a lot of Return of the Jedi's relationship with The Empire Strikes Back. Empire and The Dark Knight are considered two of the best films of all time, but do their successors live up to that? Hell no. But they're still good. Okay, if I'm being completely honest here, I had my doubts about tackling this movie. While recently rewatching it, I remembered how many mistakes the movie had made. Mistakes I had completely forgotten about. I pondered a while, is The Dark Knight Rises beyond saving? But then I remembered it's a Nolan movie, and there are always deeper meanings to Nolan movies.
Always.
I mean, the entire Dark Knight trilogy is all about fear, each movie tackling a different aspect of it. Batman Begins is about being able to face your own fear, and The Dark Knight is about the fear of losing control. Now you might be thinking, so what aspect of fear does The Dark Knight Rises tackle? Fear of sucking? No. The Dark Knight Rises is about the most important aspect of fear, and Nolan talks about this fear by making a commentary on Plato's allegory of the cave. If you don't know who Plato is, not that Plato fucking video. He was a philosopher from 400 BC Athens who once wrote a book called Republic. The Republic is where we find Plato's allegory of the cave. So to understand what Nolan is getting at in The Dark Knight Rises, we're going to have to do a little treading into Plato's allegory. I know when I pitched the show, I never said it would be about literature or philosophy, but if we didn't have either of those things, we wouldn't have a lot of this nerdy shit that we love. So bear with me. In literal terms, the allegory of the cave talks about prisoners who are chained by their necks and legs inside a cave. Their backs are turned from the cave's opening and they are facing a wall. Behind them are two different sources of light. One of them is the cave's opening, which has sunlight barely coming into it, and the other is a contained fire, which is on a ledge above the cave's opening. In front of the fire are men who hold up objects like rabbits, vases, dildos, maybe, I don't know. So their shadows would be cast on the wall that the prisoners are looking at. The prisoners would call out the names of these objects. It's a rabbit, it's a vase, it's a dildo? Believing that the shadows themselves were the real thing. Plato goes on to say that possibly one day one of the prisoners escapes his chains and is able to leave the cave. When the prisoner leaves, the sun is overbearing and almost blinds him, only really being able to see what he's used to seeing and what he wants to see, shadows. But over time, the prisoner is able to see the real objects that the shadows mimic, realizing that shadows are a false truth and that the pure light, the sun, shows him the real truth, the real objects. Eventually, the prisoner's eyes would be able to look at the sun itself, accepting the real light and turning away from the fake-ass light in the cave. The prisoner would then go back to the cave to tell his fellow prisoners that the shadows are false truths, that there are real rabbits, vases, and dildos that we can actually touch. Now, the prisoners don't believe him and actually become violent towards him, which is a sad and fucked up ending. Now, in figurative terms, this allegory is all about truth, being able to differentiate the real truth that may be scary and painful to accept, and the false truth that we want to believe. Now, while Plato mainly uses this analogy to reason that philosophers should rule the world, which no, that's dumb. I'm going to just stick to the cave basics here, which I believe Nolan also did. To recap, the prisoners are everyday people being lied to, the shadows are false truths, the men holding the objects are people who lie to us, and sunlight is the revealer of the true objects. It reveals the truth. Now, how does this all relate to The Dark Knight Rises? Well, in a lot of ways. One of the first caves we can talk about is actually formed at the end of The Dark Knight. The false truth truth is that Harvey Dent died a hero and that Batman killed a bunch of people. That false truth would be the shadows. The truth, Batman did nothing wrong and Harvey turned into a psychopath, would be the true objects that the sun shines on. And the men projecting the lies, the shadows, would be Batman and Gordon. Now there are two differences between this cave and Plato's cave. Plato describes the men who cast the shadows as very non-caring almost, but we see Gordon struggling with casting shadows at the very beginning of the movie. Instead of a prisoner slash Gothamite finding the truth themselves, the situation was almost Gordon slash the man who cast shadows turning all of his prisoners around to see the truth. Plato never really went into the struggles of the men who cast the shadows. Yes, their job might be fucked up, but that doesn't mean that they don't care or aren't conflicted by this lie that they're showing. This cave was about to combine a shadow caster and the sun. Gordon was about to be the one who shed light on the true situation, but decided that Gotham wasn't ready, because even Plato says, if you show prisoners the truth when they aren't ready, they may attack you. Now in this situation, the person who becomes the sun is Bane. He shines on the true object, which is that Harvey Dent was the one who truly killed those people, and Batman has been innocent this whole time. And then he sets the cave's prisoners free, which is something he literally does while revealing all of this. And this one thing he does is actually the best part about Bane's plan. Before I go on, I know the biggest criticism about this movie is that Bane's plan doesn't make any sense, but I'm about to show you guys why the plan makes perfect sense and that all of you deniers out there are prisoners to your own caves. Damn! Now back to the reveal of Dent's true character. A lot of people complain about it being a tool to make us remember how cool The Dark Knight was and how it ruined the impact of that ending, but I believe this reveal actually fits in perfectly with Bane's plan. You might be asking, what was Bane's plan? Why didn't he just blow up Gotham right away? Why didn't he just kill Bruce? How did he know where all of Batman's toys were? Well, I can answer those first three questions, and I don't even have to dig deep to be able to answer them. Bane straight up addresses those questions when he drops Bruce off in his prison, and I think it was lost on a lot of people because of his dumb-ass voice.
How about your schedule, Captain?
So here, I'll give you subtitles for this scene.
Why didn't you just kill me?
You don't fear death. You welcome it. Your punishment must be more severe.
Torture.
Yes. But not of your body. Of your soul.
Where am I?
Home. Where I learned the truth about despair. As will you. There's a reason why this prison is the worst hell on earth. Hope. Every man who has rotted here over the centuries has looked up to the light and imagined climbing to freedom. So easy. So simple. And like shipwrecked men turning to seawater from uncontrollable thirst. Many have died trying. And learned here that there can be no true despair without hope. So, as I terrorize Gotham, I will feed its people hope to poison their souls. I will let them believe that they can survive so that you can watch them clambering over each other to stay in the sun. You could watch me torture an entire city. And then when you have truly understood the depth of your failure, we will fulfill Ra's al Ghul's destiny. We will destroy Gotham. And then, when it is done, and Gotham is ashes, then you have my permission to die.
His plan is all centered around letting hope consume Gotham to show Bruce that his city is just as bad as it was when he returned to it in Batman Begins. But instead of making Gotham consume itself with fear like Ra's, okay, yes, it's Ra's, not Ra's. God damn it, Nolan. Bane's plan is to let Gotham consume itself with hope, because even though hope has a better connotation than fear or chaos, it can still be deadly, especially when it's false hope. Now back to the genius part of Bane's plan. He's able to seduce Gotham into believing that he is Plato's son, that he sheds the light on every truth when he revealed Harvey's true past. And by doing that, he's able to leave Gotham into his own cave, where he turns them into his own prisoners. The shadow he projects is the false hope he gave Gotham by letting them believe that his bomb can only be triggered by a detonator and will only be done so by a citizen if Gotham can't make itself better. But the truth is that while the bomb can be triggered by a detonator, it's also a time bomb that will go off no matter what, and that while a citizen is carrying the detonator, it's a citizen who happens to also be pulling Bane's strings. So Bane's plan does make sense, it's just not focused on too well, and because of that, people lose that it's centered around torture, making Bruce watch his beloved city destroy itself, and philosophy, turning Gotham and Bruce into Plato's prisoners. Now, that doesn't mean Bane's plan isn't flawed though. I mean, come on, there's always has to be a flaw in the villain's plan. That's how heroes are able to overcome their evil ways. It's storytelling 101. Bane's flaw is that he didn't convince everyone of this lie. He didn't turn everyone into a prisoner. There are people like Tommy Sullivan from Third Rock from the Sun, Sirius Black from the Harry Potter series, and God, who all know the truth and are trying to expose that truth any way they can. Instead of being overtaken by false hope, these characters, including Bruce, know of the true hope that's out there. And that's one of the main reasons why Bane fails. Some of his prisoners have escaped his lie, and also, you know, because they fail to blow the bomb at any given chance they have. I mean, come on, why wouldn't Bane and Talia blow the bomb at the first hint of Batman being back in Gotham? Shit makes no sense. Look, I never said it was perfect. But another mistake Bane made was while he locked Bruce in his prison, he didn't realize that Bruce was already mentally stuck in a prison. And by placing Bruce in his prison, Bane laid out the groundwork for Bruce to overcome his internal prison. Now you may be wondering, what was Bruce's prison? Well, in Batman Begins, Bruce discovered the truth about his own fear. He needs it to be able to take down Gotham's underworld. And in The Dark Knight, he experienced a new kind of fear, the fear of chaos, the fear of losing control, the fear of just losing in general. And the biggest loss in The Dark Knight is not Bruce's loss of Rachel, but how Bruce dealt with that loss. After losing Rachel, he decided to never have an emotional connection like that ever again. And since he decided to never gain any other relationship with the outside world, he forgot about the fear of losing any relationships. So when he returned as Batman to go after Bane, he'd forgotten about the most important part about being Batman: fear. And he thought all that he needed was physical strength because, you know, Bane is fucking ripped. So without realizing it, Bruce made himself his own prisoner. His false victory over the Joker made him forget. It was a technical win, but with a huge cost: forgetting fear. And that's why this line,
Victory has defeated you.
is fucking awesome. But hey, this entire scene is awesome, but I'll get back to that later. Anyway, back to Bruce's cave, where he is both a prisoner and a man who casts shadows, projecting to himself the false truth that all he needs to defeat an opponent is to be physically better. And the sun outside shines on the truth that he himself needs fear. Now, when Bruce is in Bane's prison, he is at the point in Plato's allegory where he is blinded by the sun and can only see the shadows, the lies that he's used to seeing. And his experience in Bane's prison are his eyes slowly adjusting to the sun's light, the truth. And that's why it's so cool that he doesn't automatically escape the prison right when his back heals. Plato says that it takes his prisoner time to be able to accept the light, like it took time for Bruce to accept the truth and to leave the prison. His first attempt out of the prison, he believes the same old thing, that he just needs to be physically better, but that obviously fails. The second attempt, he chooses to climb in anger.
No, I'm not afraid. I'm angry.
Which is a huge mistake because anger doesn't keep us focused. Anger doesn't push us to success. Anger makes us messy, makes us uncontrollable. Anger causes us to make easy mistakes. That's why Bruce doesn't even get to the big jump his second time. He thought anger would make him focus on his goal, but anger does the complete opposite of that. And it's not until right before his third attempt out of the prison, Bruce is told by the prison's old doctor how to truly escape the cave. And I just want to take a moment to emphasize that he's talking to a doctor, you know, a guy who fixes people. The doctor tells Bruce that it's not the body, it's not anger that lets you escape, it's fear. If we aren't fearful of failure, we become desensitized to victory. Without fear, why would we ever care about our personal struggles? Fear amps up our adrenaline. Fear helps us focus and accomplish our own goals. If you're not fearful of never getting a promotion, of not being accepted into a college, of not having a successful mixtape, damn, that's fire, then you don't really give a shit, do you? And that's the lesson Bruce has to relearn, and the message of the movie, that we all need fear in our lives. And because Bruce accepts that truth, he's finally able to leave the prison. But that's not the only cool aspect of this scene. Remember when I talked about Plato's prisoners having chains on them, which makes it impossible to ever leave their cave since they are still attached to it? The first two times Bruce is climbing the cave, oh hey, he's attached to a rope. Now this visual metaphor might be obvious, this, but it's so cool. He can't truly escape Bane's prison while he's still attached to it. Bruce can't escape his own prison while he is still attached to it. He's finally able to leave the prison when he refuses the rope, escaping the chains of his own prison. And another awesome visual metaphor we have here is when Bruce finally comes to the big jump. Instead of focusing just on the goal, making the jump, which is what he did the first time, he looks up at the light, at the truth. And when he does that, he rediscovers fear. And then bats, his greatest fucking fear, literally start flying around him. It's a fucking smorgasbord of fucking awesome visual metaphors in this fucking scene. Fuck! And I'll also point out the fact that this is the first time we see bats at all since Batman Begins, when Bruce originally discovered his true fears. And that's why he defeats Bane when he returns to Gotham. Not because he's stronger, not because he's mad, but because he finally returned to the light, returned to the truth that he needs fear to succeed. He needs it to remind himself of why he wants to succeed. And that's why both of the fight scenes between Bane and Batman are so fucking rad. Yes, both of them, even though the second one has the dumbest line ever written in cinema.
So you came back to die with your city.
I came back to stop you.
I never said it was perfect. But yeah, they're both fucking cool because the first fight takes place in a cave in the dark when Bruce is still engulfed in his own lie. And it's not until after he escapes Bane's prison, escapes his own prison, that Bruce faces Bane in the light, both literally and figuratively. And not only can he beat Bane now since he has entered the light, but also because one, Bane never accepted the light.
You think darkness is your ally? You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it. I didn't see the light until I was already a man. By then it was nothing to me but blinding.
And two, Bane never escaped the cave on his own.
How have you come back?
You think you're the only one who could learn the strength to escape. Where's the trigger?
But I never escaped.
He was dragged out of the cave by race, never of his own accord. So when he finally left it, he was just like Plato's prisoners that weren't ready to see the light. And just like Plato's prisoners who weren't ready, Bane turned to violence and anger. Bane never accepted the truth that fear is needed, and that is why he ultimately fails. And that is what this movie is about, being able to remember that we all need fear to overcome the obstacles we face in life. Because if we have no fear, we have no drive. If we didn't fear things like extinction, we wouldn't have the drive to make advances in science to help stop death, to help clean this fucked up planet, to help maybe leave this fucked up planet. If we don't fear things like death, we will pointlessly die and be forgotten. But if we fear death and extinction, if we give a shit, we may possibly be remembered as a species that tried in this terrifyingly huge galaxy. And that's why this movie is good. While it makes a ton of mistakes and uses a plot device that was literally a punchline in 66 Batman,
some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Nolan was still making a point about the necessity of fear, and did that by using Plato's allegory of the cave. And that's some pretty deep shit right there. That's a great message for a movie to stand on. And hey, it at least stands for more than whatever the fuck these movies did. And an even more important message Nolan made in The Dark Knight Rises, which I've been talking about this entire time, is that we should never let ourselves be chained down inside Plato's cave. We let that happen too much today. We are constantly fed false truths either by ourselves or from others. These lies make us misinterpret and misunderstand what is really going on in the world, and that misunderstanding breeds confusion, hatred, violence, and destruction. And we constantly make excuses for never looking for the light, never looking for the truth. The primary excuse is that a lot of the time, the truth hurts, just like when we first look into the sun, and we'd rather stay comfortable than facing that pain, but over time, that pain slowly fades away until we finally accept the truth, until we can finally look into the sun, and that always takes time. And that is why I enjoy this movie. While I acknowledge the faults it for sure has, it's still an intriguing piece on fear and truth. So if you're someone who has never been able to enjoy The Dark Knight Rises, or maybe someone who has never seen it and just enjoys philosophy, I recommend checking it out again or for the first time with these ideas in mind, because you might be able to see the ultimate message and the ultimate challenge that Christopher Nolan lies before us. And this challenge is the most important takeaway from this movie. No matter what our roles in Plato's allegory of the cave are, whether we be the prisoner or the shadow caster, the shadows or the light, the chains or the dildos, no matter who we are or how comfortable we are with our false truths, we all must one day face our fears and take a step into the light.
5, 4, 3, 2. You crazy mother.